there are many more accomplishments on the long list of these guys. They've both been around for many years and have been at the top of the game this entire time. Diego does have that Solgaleo Lunala, which he really doesn't want to start in this game because it is weak to Psychic. Azul has the same situation with a Mewtwo, so they're basically completely evenly matched here. We're going to have a straight up back and forth here with very similar 60s.
Absolutely. Well, let's head on down into the game then, and let's cross our fingers that neither player starts with their free prize basic tag team GX, which is weak to Psychic. That would not be a particularly good way to go. Diego is going to choose to go first here, and this is what we see from a lot of players nowadays, because... Pardon?
Azul has that Mewtwo. He doesn't know Diego's deck, so he is going to get the bad news straight away.
Oh, that's
man,
not good.
That is rough.
Great for Diego, and Diego gets to go first. And these VMAX decks, you want to be VMAXing first, you want to go first. For a long time, we had these really aggressive decks with things like Welder, where you wanted to go second and get that huge turn 1 KO and attack. Nowadays, with the format we're in, a lot of these decks are like, I'll go first, have a turn setting up, and oh, you better watch out for turn 2.
And Diego, I don't really know what to make of it, because when you see a Mewtwo, I'm not thinking necessarily of Shadow Rider straight away. It's a bit of an unconventional tech card that Azul's gone for here. Are you expecting something like Pikachu and Zekrom at this stage? I'm not really sure what he wants to be playing around. Regardless, his hand is just fine. He can go ahead, get his manual attachment down. He's got double Shadow Rider Calyrex developed. He's already got an Incense for next turn and a Research. So overall, no matter what you're playing against, you're pretty happy with this kickoff.
Once again, he's setting up for a turn 2 double Shadow Rider Calyrex. It's a little bit ridiculous. And this is where we end up in a weird situation with it being an online tournament. Oh, that's a pretty brutal Professor's Research, getting rid of a lot of resources. But gets a double Shadow Rider. So, you know, being an online tournament means that you can actually get all this way into the tournament and genuinely not know what your opponent is playing. If this was an in real life tournament, there is no way these players don't know each other's decks at this stage.
Yeah, if you're looking around the tables, you're sat next to each other on similar records type deal, you'd have that little bit of insight if you're paying attention to who's around you, and you definitely take note of what the big players are playing at tournaments. It's always one of those things where you think, oh boy, I'd rather not queue into this guy, let's see what he's playing sort of thing. But that is a difference here that we have with the online series, and Azul is eyeing up a Gengar Mimikyu here, just really crossing his fingers to buy himself a turn. With that Horror House, he's already attached to the Mewtwo, so he would be putting down another fragile free prizer, but I'm not sure what other options he has. We've said this a few times with Azul. He's always just like doing what he absolutely has to because he has no other options going for him, thanks to some awkward draws.
Absolutely. I certainly like Diego's start a lot better than I like Azul, so we do see it looks like the Horror House GX coming down here. I mean, that certainly is what he set the board up for, so yeah, we do see Horror House GX. Going to mean that Diego can't play any cards next turn, so actually not going to get the turn 2 double Shadow Rider, but could actually retreat and play Shadow Mist if he so wished.
I think I actually like the Shadow Mist here quite a bit. Although you're losing energy, it means that you keep your air balloon open for potential like response knockouts with your own Gengar Mimikyu potentially, because you would only need 2 energy. And presumably Azul would be having a larger hand size, because if the Mewtwo does end up taking a knockout or anything like that, Azul would certainly have plenty of cards and many trainers open. So I think I actually value the balloon that little bit more than the Psychic Energy in this instance.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think that's a good one. It does look like we're going to see a retreat maybe into the Marshadow, you know. And again, It's like we keep saying about single prize Pokemon. If you time it right, you can give up a KO on a single prize Pokemon and it makes no real difference to how close you are to losing the game.
Yeah, this is also super reasonable from Diego. Just try and keep as many Shadow Riders around as possible, as Azul is going to fire off a Marnie and try to develop something here. Can't find his own Shadow Rider VMAX, unfortunately, and can't even take the 1 prize KO. Diego only draws 1 reset stamp, but he has a Dedenne and his own Alcremie here, so things have worked out very nicely for Diego. That is the whim of Poltergeist. There's nothing guaranteed there. You just have to pray that the Marnie is kind to you, and in this instance, it hasn't really helped Azul too much. So Diego can develop now this Dedenne GX and start to draw a few more cards here.
And that's the problem. Marshadow might be a psychic Pokemon, but because it's a ghost type in the video games, that means it's got a darkness weakness in the TCG, not that usual psychic weakness. So, or at least back in the Sun and Moon era, what would have been a psychic weakness. So this means that it's getting kind of awkward. You don't get the KO, and Diego just continues setting up his board. He's got Underworld Door out here, and that Mewtwo and Mew is weak. Could we see? I mean, there is still a possibility here of a KO on the Mewtwo and Mew this turn. He has drawn that second Shadow Rider Calyrex. He's got an energy ready to go with that Underworld Door. He's got the retreat on the Marshadow. Does he have enough energy in play?
No, I don't think we do. You may even see a red Knuckles here. I think it's a lot worse because there's a Dene in play now, so you may just go ahead and swing with your Shadow Rider, but it's not going to be enough to take a KO. There still is supporters potentially for Diego if he'd like to. But it's not as breezy as you'd think. Normally with this huge psychic weakness, you'd want to try and knock this Mewtwo out all in one hit. But if Azul is able to tank, it would be a big break for him.
Absolutely. If you can survive that hit when you've got weakness, that is going to be a very, very good thing. It's got to be what he's looking for. Now, we do have another Shadow Rider coming down here. Of course, at this stage of the game, your draw power is mostly from Underworld Door. Cards like the Dene become a lot less important because you've got draw power out. Might even play a Path to the Peak here. Yeah. Now, this is a little bit risky, but Diego's basically going, look, my setup is way better than your setup. So actually, you need those abilities more than I do, so I'm cool. And of course, Mewtwo and Mew really needs that ability.
Yeah, Azul only has energy committed to his Mewtwo now, so just firing off the Max Geist is pretty safe. I think Diego potentially could have played his Evolution Incense there, just to have one less trainer available.
Oh, wow.
But Azul's conceded. He's not happy with his hand. He feels that he's pretty far behind, and that's certainly the case. And the Path to the Peak really sealing the deal there means that Azul has not much to go for whatsoever, so he's going to just scoop things up and move on to that second game where he'll at least be able to go first.
Yeah, I mean, had a bad hand, went second, started Mewtwo and Mew. If you're making a list of things you don't want to happen in this game, that's basically as always just checking them off all the way through. I mean, Diego actually had a really nice play there. He put Path to the Peak in play with his Marshadow, of course, still on the bench because the Poltergeist hadn't got the KO. So it was actually a risk-free Path to the Peak because if Diego really wanted his abilities back next turn, he could get them. And Azul just went, you know what? I can't attack with Mewtwo and Mew. I can't bounce a stadium. I'm going to go too far behind. Let's just go straight into game two. Speaking of which, let's just go straight into game two and see if Azul can have a better start than in game one.
That is the good news for Azul here. He's not going to have much worse of a time. Like you said, the Mewtwo, the lack of Shadow Rider. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. And he does have the advantage of going first at the very least to get developed that little step ahead of Diego. So we will see things starting off with a mulligan here. So hopefully we will start seeing some basics come out now. He does have a Shadow Rider and a Trevenant and Dusknoir. It's an interesting card that can really be that little bit awkward in the opening because it can do kind of like better damage than Shadow Rider normally can by around that turn 2 margin. And with a couple energy and switch already in hand, it may be something he looks towards and actually does attach to it straight away and is a fast pass over to Diego here.
I kind of like this. Oh, looks like Diego has got a painful Professor's Research, though. Loses the research, some energy. I know we've got Ordinary Rod in the deck, but what you want Ordinary Rod for that late game, hey, I want this specific Pokemon back. You don't want Ordinary Rod to just cover your horrendous turn 1 Professor's Research. So Diego already dropping a bunch of resources, does have a Shadow Rider V on the bench. So the question now is, do you go for another Shadow Rider V? Do you maybe go for the Dene to draw more cards? Maybe a Gengar and Mimikyu to get that turn 1 Horror House? There's a lot of options, but Diego's hand, I keep talking about how he has the more consistent deck. Well, might not be working quite so well here.
Yeah, and he has a tough decision whether or not he wants to just grab a second Shadow Rider or potentially one of his VMAXs, maybe the Gengar coming in. It is a fragile 3-prizer, but it is a great way to buy back a turn. And when you start falling behind, it is a go-to option. But I think, again, the safest route here, just grab a second Shadow Rider, have your turn 1 attachment onto one of these two, and simply pass it back over to Azul, where you're holding onto a Marnie and an Incense, so not too shabby in the end.
Not too shabby unless Trevenant and Dusknoir starts attacking. If Diego attaches here, and you can see him thinking about it, because he knows as well as we do, Trevenant and Dusknoir, if it attacks, is going to take 2 of those free cards out of his hand. Now, 2 of them are great. But the problem is, if Azul goes and hits the incense and the Marnie, that is going to give basically no options. And even if he leaves the incense, you're still going to need an energy to get anything out from it. So with a 3-card hand, and it does look like that's what we're seeing, although the Marnie is going to make that 3-card hand largely irrelevant, but still, you're going to be talking about a 4-card hand, 2 of them being taken with Trevenant and Dusk Noir, or you would have done if Azul had drawn slightly better off the Marnie.
Yeah, his hand was a dud off of that Marnie. No Shadow Rider VMAX, so can't accelerate with Underworld Door, giving Diego a bit of a break here, and it allows him to potentially launch the first attack as he's drawn straight into one of his own VMAXs and could start to Underworld Door onto itself. Then you can go ahead and play the switch, and then you only need to Marnie into an attachment. We'll see how he wants to play it here.
Yeah, I like Diego's hand a lot more now than when he ended his previous turn. He's got, actually, to be fair, it's pretty much the same, but still got everything he needs. And Trevenant and Dusk Noir could have been horrible. Chooses to manually attach here rather than using Underworld Door, then plays the Marnie. So could have switched, and after using Underworld Door, chooses instead to just Marnie. And here we don't see any energy. Plenty of switching cards. But I think it's going to be a bench Shadow Rider and pass here because he can switch a couple of times. It's not going to do much good.
Neither of these players are having, the barnstorming starts. Diego chose to pass up drawing 2 before his Marnie. But Azul has finally now got himself a Shadow Rider and can begin his Underworld Doors. I imagine it's got to go on to the Trevenant Dusk Noir. It won't be knocking out to Dene. It'll just be 10 damage shy. But you will be disrupting Diego with a 3-card hand and none of his own VMAXs into play. So I think you definitely go for this attack here. If you can reach it, the Crobat does get the switch, and we also see an Evolution Incense, so Azul is starting to get going here.
Absolutely. Diego does have 1 VMAX on the bench, so that will mean that any Psychic Energy will turn into an out for Underworld Door, but it just becomes so awkward because Diego's going to have a 1-card hand, and it's not going to be a good card, whatever it is. And then the top deck, getting that VMAX last turn for Diego was absolutely huge because it has turned Psychic Energy into an out, but it is just making his turn so much more awkward.
Yeah, and Boss's Orders really spices things up here. You can go for the Night Watch onto a 3-prize Pokemon, which is much better for you. You throw away a couple of switching outs, and Diego really needs a draw here.
Absolutely. What is it going to be? He draws a switch. Switch and Recess Stab will not do anything. Diego might have a Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, but he does not have enough energy on it to actually launch an attack. He's got no way to draw any cards. He's got to retreat here. He does not want to give up the free prizes. So essentially his turn was just retreating away from the boss's orders. And that was it. That was the entire turn.
Yeah, Azul's going to go chasing another Boss's Orders here, no doubt. I think you definitely want to try and just capitalize on this as much as possible. You get yourself your Alchemy developed, but I think we will be seeing these Shadow Riders not coming into play, and you can just thin one of these cards out of your deck. He's going to choose to get rid of a Marshadow here. Actually, no, he's going to go for a research, so not looking towards Boss's Orders this turn. He's actually just going to be content, potentially retreating out of his Trevenant and Dusk Noir and taking a 2-prize KO. Alternatively, you can just keep your opponent on 0, and then, now he's got boss for next turn. You just say, Diego, have 1 more top deck. I'll try again next turn.
Yeah, I would like to have seen that the Dedenne would have hit the boss's orders off the Dedenne, and also it would mean that Psychic Energy wasn't an out, whereas now it is, and that makes a huge, and it is a Psychic Energy, which means he can Underworld Door, he can draw 2 cards. This is why I would have loved to have seen the Dedenne into the boss's orders, because had that Shadow Rider Calyrex been KO'd, this would have been just a completely pointless card. As it is, and don't get me wrong, right, this is still not a good position for Diego. I am not going to pretend for a second that it is, but it's a darn sight better than if Azul had hit a boss's orders.
Yeah, and Diego's probably going to play the Psych Energy as well, because otherwise it's just getting shuffled back in. So we are going to see the Alchemy come down, and now Azul will pounce with the boss's orders now that it's guaranteed. He already has the switch in hand, plenty of energy to just max Geist and finish off the KO. Then he's got the Alchemy as a follow-up, so yeah, Diego back down to a 0-card hand. I can't see Azul losing from this position outside of some crazy combination next turn.
No, and we are just a turn later than I said, because now we are getting rid of the only VMAX, which means Psychic Energy is no longer an out to draw anything. So Diego really basically needs to draw a draw supporter. I do enjoy his, you're getting rid of all the cards in my hand, joke's on you, I don't have any cards in my hand. But unfortunately, it's not going to lead to victory. We do see the KO from Azul, and if Diego hasn't conceded yet, I think it might be pretty soon. Like you say, it's awkward saying this. I don't see us all losing from this position.
Yeah, and a Fog Crystal is going to do nothing. Two fast concessions here in the best of three. First Azul with not much to work with, and Diego was the player who had all the Shadow Riders rolling and drawing a ton more cards. This time around, it's Azul who's taken control early with his Trevenant and Dust Noir, even with the top decks slightly in Diego's favor, not really able to really ignite and get drawing into cards. So unfortunately, we're coming into a game 3 where neither player has got fully developed, and it's just been a one-sided affair so far.
Absolutely, and we saw the power of Trevenant and Dust Noir there. For some players, it is their favorite card. For other players, it is their least favorite card. It can win games, it can lose games. It's a weird kind of card, but it's become popular all over again with Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. So we did see Diego there waiting for his top deck, just giving one more chance. Had that been a draw supporter, maybe we'd have seen another couple turns, but Diego knew that a Fog Crystal was not going to win the game. So let's head on down into game 3 and see if we can have both players setting up. It hasn't really happened yet. We've had two fast concessions. Let's see if we can have a bit more of a back and forth game here. Remember, we're in the losers bracket. Winner of this goes to the losers finals, but the loser of this is just out of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually quite indicative of how Shadow Rider Calyrex mirror matches go, because the player who's ahead is not only taking prize cards, but if they're using boss's orders effectively, they also undo a ton of attachments, and that's exactly what both Alchemy and Shadow Rider need to like stay in the game. So in many ways, this is how the mirror match can go. It's oftentimes not the most exciting, unfortunately, because it does feel like one person gets more Shadow Rider developed and they just power spike their way ahead of the opponent and really like kick them while they're down kind of thing as they start undoing the opponent's board that little bit more. For Diego here, starts off with one Calyrex V in the active and can go ahead and Fog Crystal for another copy here. He's also got Quick Ball and Turn Attachment, so all around pretty rosy.
Yeah, this is looking really, really good for Diego. Plays his Quick Ball. He has even got a Dedenne he could choose to play if he's willing to drop some supporters. Gets a third Calyrex, and I think he was listening to you there, Joe, despite the fact that, you know, he definitely can't, because actually he is working on getting the most Shadow Rider Calyrex into play. Ooh. That is not a good hand, though.
That is horrific. The only good news is that you've drawn very few trainer cards, and Azul has started off with his Gengar and Mimikyu. So that's the only thing going for you. But again, you're in top deck mode from Diego's side, whereas Azul going to go through his opening search of the deck with his own Fog Crystal here. You could quite easily see a Horror House GX coming down early game here, because really what you're trying to do is develop your VMAXs where they are, you know, a lot healthier, and you start getting a ton of energy spread across the board. And, you know, even with that bonus effect of the Gengar, it would only be an additional card for Diego, so it's not a huge deal from your opponent's end. We are going to see Azul throw away a couple VMAXs and Dedenne, once again in search of some more basics, and he does find himself a nice couple of options for Shadow Rider here. I think you always put the second copy down. The Fog Crystal may stay open so that you can guarantee an Underworld door next turn with the combination of Incense and Fog. So I think he's pretty happy to GX here and buy himself a turn.
Absolutely. That Horror House really being an attack which is being said over and over again. Diego draws and passes. It's a fifth energy. One of the few things he really didn't need. So I suppose if you're looking for a silver lining, Diego couldn't do anything last turn anyway. Yeah. He really needs a good top deck next turn, though.
Horror House was basically a blank. Obviously, it's always not to know that, but it's actually pretty nice for Diego overall. When how destructive Horror House could be, it's one of those things where you kind of shrug and say, I would have done nothing anyway. For Azul, though, he doesn't have many other options towards the VMAX just yet, which is unfortunate for him. He probably wants to fire off a research and dig for a VMAX. He only has one remaining in the deck because he did have to discard some early with his research from last turn. So we'll see how he wants to develop this. If he's eyeing up the Mewtwo, it may be for discard fodder with the research. And I think that might be a good decision.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, like we said, it's not a card that you really want to be seeing played this turn. You know, it's just not going to do much. Has he used Underworld Door on that Shadow Rider Calyrex V Max? Because he's got an energy on the Gengar and Mimikyu, but used Horror... Oh, yes, he does. It's on the Trevenant and Dustois. So you're right. It is just really looking for the V Max at this stage. So, I mean, again, if you use Marnie, you're giving Diego a much better hand. He probably doesn't realize quite how much better. But if you use Professor's Research, you're losing another Marnie, you're losing a Fog Crystal, you're losing Boss's Orders and a Switch. You want to lose a Mew to a Mew, but there's a lot of discard going on here. The players are losing a lot of cards they're probably going to want in the future.
Yeah, it's actually getting a little bit awkward. There's still, one Marnie remaining for Azul and a couple Boss's Orders, so it's not the end of the world for him. The thing that's awkward is that you don't really want to throw away a Switch. You'd really like to just try and Marnie and Nightwatch here. That would be his dream combination. That's why we saw the early Underworld Door onto the Trevenant and Dust Noir. But he may settle for a Poltergeist and just research here, hoping that there are more items in Diego's hand than we know that there are currently. It seems like a really good Poltergeist because you forced a pass and there's 7 cards rattling around. It's not unlikely for you to take a huge knockout and take 2 prizes with your Gengar. But as we can see, the plan's not going to work out perfectly for Azul here.
It's not, but actually the one thing it will do to Azul is basically just raise a giant flag going, do not disrupt Diego's hand, don't play a Marnie, because, well, had he just gone for the Poltergeist, he would have seen quite how bad the hand was. Diego got to be breathing a huge sigh of relief here, because that was a completely unworkable hand. Here we got 2 draw supporters and an Air Balloon, which is a switching card. That is an infinitely better hand than he had before. And it is just being passed straight back over to Diego. And this is nice, because now we've got an Evolution Incense pulled off the top. That is definitely going to be a Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. And now we can see probably a Professor's Research to draw a whole bunch of cards. And now we can start rolling with something. This is a lot better.
Yeah, the Marnie was actually really unfortunate for Azul. He drew into his Reset Stamp and one of his 2 remaining Boss's Orders, so he couldn't really go digging deeper with Dedenne. He could have ornery rodded it back into the deck and just started to go towards the Nightwatch, but that hand is just too precious to give up, so he had to just hope that the Marnie stuck. In this case, it's not going to do too much good, and Diego can get rolling here. His hand's still not great, though. He's going to need some help from this Underworld Door if he's actually going to piece together some more VMAXs.
He is. He's at least got enough to get an attack off now. He can, use that.
Yeah.
He's got an attachment for the turn. He's got the Air Balloon already on the active. Does not look like he's found his way into another VMAX, unfortunately, which is not ideal. Could attach and start attacking, which you got to start getting some damage down at some point. It's not perfect, but there's still a Fog Crystal there, and there's still a Quick Ball there. Could maybe go Path to the Peak here. Try and slow us all down for a turn, especially considering that he's got something like a Fog Crystal if he wants to re-establish, and he might even be going for the Mars Shadow here, so he can play Path to the Peak, knowing that he can get rid of it if he needs to in the future. We've seen him make that play before.
Yeah, I really like him discarding the Alcremie, knowing he's got the Ordinary Rod already developed in hand, so he can have that option back for him. He's even going to grab the V before the Dede change here, so looking pretty okay. I think you do commit to your energy attachment to your Shadow Rider VMAX, and also the Air Balloon can come down. And then you just want to go ahead and Dede change. He may even put the Air Balloon on something like his other Dedenne here, just to have a retreat pass play if he doesn't want to attack into this Gengar, because you can quite easily knock it out for 1 hit later. As we do actually see an Incense and 1 Fog Crystal, so we'll at least see 1 more Underworld Door here. I don't even think it's amazing to attack into this Gengar, especially with the amount of trainers that you've drawn into.
Absolutely. Just to be clear, you could not play the Path to the Peak and then put Dedenne down. That would be massively counterintuitive. But were he going for a slower route through the game? You don't Path to the Peak and then Dedenne. We've all done that or something similar, and we don't feel proud about ourselves. But we do here have just another Underworld Door. We got 2 of the VMAXs established here, and this is starting to look really good. Diego's board is looking very tidy right now. We got 4 energy down. This is not a KO, but it's a significant amount of damage, more than halfway there. We got the Alcremie there, which could turn into a VMAX in the future. Got plenty of options for Underworld Door, so it took a little while, but I'm liking Diego's setup here.
Yeah, it's always got a tricky situation to try and figure out. I think you're always trying to move out of your Gengar. It's too heavily damaged. You'd rather like protect the energy elsewhere. He is going to commit an energy onto his Shadow Rider and does draw into an Evolution Incense. So at least that's an option for him. I think he's prized his Crobat as well. So he may be forced to Dede change even these valuable resources here.
And that is not what you want to do. We've seen a lot of awkward discards already in this series, but we talked about it before. That we've had games where they did and games where they chose not to. You've got to give yourself the best chance to win, and this is a huge game. It's game 3. We're in the losers bracket. Loser of this is going home. It's so awkward because, like you say, you don't want to get rid of those resources, but then if you don't have enough in hand to actually get yourself towards a victory, then the bigger risk might even be to not go to Dene. So it really depends on how good Azul feels about his board and about his hand, because it's starting to look awkward.
Yeah, interestingly, Azul could have just gone for communication and grabbed his Alchemy VMAX there. Instead, he just wanted to thin his deck of a card and just go for the Dede change. Evolving up into the Alchemy VMAX does have its own dangers because it has 310 hit points, which actually is 1 less energy required for Diego. But it could have been a way that Azul could have pieced together a huge knockout here, actually, with the G-Max Whisk, with still an Underworld door and a turn attachment, I believe, open to him. The good news is Azul has drawn an Air Balloon, which is really nice for him. He has drawn back into Quick Ball and Calm, so he could still try and go for the Alchemy VMAX. Not now, because it's been discarded. But it could just be a big research here. Or even Marnie Nightwatch.
No, there is one in his hand. He got it back with the Ordinary Rod earlier on in the game. It's there in his deck if he wants it, I believe. But I don't think he wants it right now. I think it is just... Wow, what's he... But what is he attacking with? Like, is he going to risk a Poltergeist? You're going to give up a prize if you Poltergeist here. Or does he still have an Underworld door if he can find himself another energy? He's not used his supporter for the turn yet, so looks like we're going to Marnie and try and work towards a Max Geist here, which is probably the better option. And we do see both an energy and a Fog Crystal being drawn, so this looks like there's going to be some options. No, it is just going to be a Night Watch. Yeah,
he'd already spent all of his Underworld doors. I actually feel like going for the VMAX was a great way to like steal a ton of tempo there, literally whisking away Diego's VMAX with all the energy committed onto it. I guess the only thing you're afraid of is a response Gmax Whisk, and then you can fall prey to, a combination of 2 in a row sort of deal. So you can see the reasons for it, but Diego is left with 1 Underworld door here and is looking to get some supporters or just some more Psych energy to get rolling here.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And we got the Marnie draw cards. We got another Shadow Rider, so not going too bad here. There are options.
Yeah, I think he's pretty happy. He's got all of his air balloons established onto all of his Shadow Riders as well, so freedom of movement between all of those. He does pick up a couple more Psych Energy, which is nice. You are forced to just hit into this Trevenant Dusknoir. I don't think you can reach enough to take a 1-hit KO here. He possibly could, actually. How many are we at? We're going to 6, and we still have 1 Underworld door and 1 turn attachment, which we do hit.
Yeah, we're going to have 8 total.
So we can get there, right? Oh, no. Yeah, we need 9? I can't remember.
Well, we got what?
No, we're there. We're there, right? Yeah.
We're there. I'm going to take your word for it, Joe. You're doing the sums. You're doing
Are we
the
at
adding,
250? I think we're at 250. I can't count. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 210, 240, 250. Yeah, I think we're off.
Oh, it's like Mewtwo maths all over again. Or Evil Town maths, depending on where you started playing. So it does look like we are going to see the Max Geist, which means we don't have to do any adding. We can see if it's enough damage. And it is not quite. We are, as you suggested, just a tiny bit short there. So unfortunately, wasn't going to do. We did need that Ninth Energy. There was no Ninth Energy coming down. But there is a Pokemon which is very close to being KO'd. But it's not KO'd. So now Azul can start working on maybe getting that back to the bench, protecting it for a moment. And, we can Underworld door onto the Calyrex VMAX here and essentially start attacking. There's even a boss's orders to potentially take out the damage VMAX on the bench, or he could just attack into this active and start using boss later.
Yeah, Azul's board position is pretty insane now. I think exactly what you said. He could Max Geist into the damaged VMAX from a Diego side, and then you just set up the Whisk for the game. As we are going to see Quick Ball just thinning some cards by the looks of things. Don't think he needs to do too much else here. The only awkward thing is you're losing an energy drop to the balloon. The alternative is that you just whisk this turn and try and keep as many underworld doors open for the following next turn. The upside of that being is that you have more draw, essentially, to work towards boss's orders. Both looking pretty good here.
Absolutely. We did see an underworld door onto the Alcremie, and we did see the evolution there. So actually, that path is very much left open. And now that we've seen an attachment per turn onto the benched V Max, that means that there's not going to be a Max Geist coming down, I don't believe. So we do see an air balloon, and we see a Professor's Research. So it seems like we're going to be attacking into the active, which I think means Alcremie.
Yeah, I think we're whisking away here for a big KO. He has no other attacking option. I'm pretty certain you never want a Night Watch in this situation, so it's going to be a big G-Max whisk for a huge KO here, and hopefully Azul still has enough energy to actually close out the damaged Calyrex. That's something you have to bear in mind. There are none in the discard pile, and so I think the combination of taking some prizes here and the Fog Crystal in hand should be enough to get him over the line. He only has 5 cards remaining in deck. He'll draw for turn. He'll have Fog Crystal. He has a lot of ways to close out next turn.
I mean, if he's got 5 cards remaining in deck, 2 Underworld Door plus draw for turn, that should just give him everything in his entire deck. And, you know, Azul's a great player. Azul has definitely double-checked that the cards he needs to win the game are in there. So it's unusual seeing the G-Max Whisk come in early. Generally, it's the game ender. But that's not what we're seeing here. We do see a little bit of back and forth, but finally we see the G-Max Whisk coming down. 360 damage, a one-hit KO on an undamaged V-Max that doesn't end the game. Not something we see all that often.
Azul gonna grab some prizes. Crobat, Psychic, and Marnie. None of them are too bad at all. Diego is gripping onto a reset stamp. You have to imagine that's going to be a play for him next turn. I think he only has a few energy remaining in play, though. I think there's only a couple around his board and the damaged Shadow Rider Calyrex. So I don't know how much he can do outside of a stamp and boss's orders play here. The good news for Azul is that he keeps all of his VMAXs open to draw himself out of this. Diego's certainly taking his time, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see from Diego's side of the board, there are 2 heavily damaged free prize tag team GXs on Azul's side of the field. There are 2 very easy KOs that will give Diego the victory. The question becomes not what do you KO? It's pretty obvious what you KO. The question becomes, can I start using boss's orders to take those KOs while avoiding you finishing out the game? And I'd like to say, I think it's one of those, and we've seen it a lot already. You're going to play a reset stamp, and you're going to cross your fingers.
Yeah, and you can attack with just the regular Alcremie V here to take a knockout, I'm pretty certain. So I think it's stamp boss's orders, use a 2-prizer, and force Azul to have that last boss's orders to close out the game. I don't think there's much else Diego can do. He has 1 more Underworld Door to draw a couple additional cards if he'd like to, but I think this has to be his best option.
Yeah, I like it. I like having a 2-prizer because then Azul will take a KO but not actually win the game. So I think that's pretty much all you can do at this stage. It's that awkward situation where the game's not really in your control anymore. It's where you've got to do this and get a little bit of help. Azul is in the driver's seat here. Azul, if he can do what he wants to do, will win this game. Diego's got to hope that his backup plan will work and that he can disrupt Azul just enough to just give himself that extra turn to win. If Azul's got a boss's orders and an attacker, then he's going to win next turn. It really is as simple as that.
Diego's gone ahead and Underworld Doored his other Shadow Rider, which still isn't able to attack. And now he doesn't have the option to use his Alcremie unless he turns it into a VMAX. I don't even know if he has that option available to him. So I'm not sure what he can attack with here. He may be forced to use Professor's Research to actually attack with something that isn't his active Pokemon right now, because that has to be a death sentence if you do.
Absolutely. I mean, if he's not attacking with a 2-prize Pokemon, then that's basically game. I mean, maybe the 3-prize are on the bench because it's more difficult to KO, but that Alcremie's there and you're not getting a KO. So, and that is how you get the big KOs. We've already seen it once. There's a couple Underworld Door. So we do see the boss's orders coming down, and it is on that Gengar and Mimikyu. But if you just attack here, you've got to think you've lost. And Neither of those bench Pokemon have the third energy you need. Is Diego just realizing this? Because we saw him just hover over those two Pokemon. He's just going to click the max Geist, but unfortunately that is not going to be enough. Azul was thinking, right, I just need to get a boss's orders off this Marnie, and that is going to be the game. But we're going to see Diego take his prize cards here, and if Azul can do, 170 damage? Then he is going to close out this game, and he's got the Alchemy, so you've got to think he's got some options here.
Yeah, his deck is that, there aren't many cards remaining in it at all. So he has pretty good odds. You still have a Crobat in there as well, so you may not even bench anything at this stage and just go for the Marnie and then have good access to your entire deck after this. But it feels like we could be seeing a Whisk here back to back for some big KOs. I really would have liked to have seen the Alchemy V come in from Diego last turn, but didn't look to be the line that he was looking for.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it just does not seem like it's going to be working. It's not going like he wants it to. It's, Azul here really does look like he's going to be able to finish out this game, unfortunately. So we do see the Underworld door onto the Alchemy. We've got a second Underworld door, which will go onto the Alchemy. We've got an attachment for the turn. That is going to put a total of 5 energy on the field, which is 300 damage, which is more than enough. Only 4, but 200 damage will still be enough. And Alchemy VMAX will get a big KO on Shadow Rider Calyrex and put Azul into the losers bracket finals and unfortunately eliminate Diego from the tournament.
Yeah, really excellent series from both players there. I feel like Diego could have gone a different line in that final turn, and it did make life a lot easier for Azul, who drew into a Marnie but not a boss's orders, and surprisingly didn't draw any psychic energy, which he had still plenty of rattling around in his deck. So maybe a slightly different line there. The outcome could have been different, but regardless, Azul made no missteps and really found a way to win there, using his G-Max Whisk to great effect turn after turn.
Yeah, that was really, really strong play from Azul there. It's what we see from top players all the time. You don't expect an Alchemy to take 2 KOs in a row. Alchemy is in the deck, so at the end of the game, you've been using these Underworld doors, you've been getting all the energy on the field, and this is your big payoff at the end of the game, this one big KO to finish out the game. But Azul turned around in that game and went, well, I don't know if that's going to be enough here. Let's just use it 2 turns in a row. It will be fine. And once again, it was real edge of your seat stuff. It could have gone either way, but in the end, it was fine, and Azul will go forward into the losers finals. So let's go and take a look at the bracket then, remind ourselves which players are still in the tournament and their route to victory. And it's quite simple. The winner of Natalie and Alex will go to grand finals, the loser will play Azul in losers finals, and the winner of that game will then also go on into grand finals. And that is essentially your route to see who is going to be your champion. I mean, who are you liking at this stage, Joe?
Well, it's a really strange one. I think the outcome of Natalie and Alex is obviously a big deal. Even if Natalie does lose in the winners finals, we've seen that she's had a really good time of dealing with the Shadow Rider. So at some point, Azul will have to deal with an army of Galarian Moltres, whether it's in losers finals or grand finals. So I'm expecting one of the Rapid Strike Urshifu to come out on top. Now, which one, I'm not so certain. So that's going to be something that we'll have to watch out for in the upcoming games.
Absolutely. The way the bracket shakes out, Azul cannot avoid playing Natalie. And unfortunately, we saw Natalie play against a Shadow Rider yesterday, and it was a very, very one-sided game. Unless that was just a fluke 2 games in a row, it looks like Natalie has got that matchup sewn up. So if I'm Azul here, I am not looking forward to playing against Natalie if it does come down to that. But then we've got this winners finals of Natalie against Alex. We've got these 2 Rapid Strike decks, but they are not the same Rapid Strike Urshifu deck.
No, they're very different, as we said. So we are down to just 3 players remaining. But if you want to learn a little bit more about all 8 of our competitors in this tournament, we've got a fantastic article over on Pokemon.com. So you can learn a little bit more about the history of some of these players, some of their highlight reel moments in tournaments such as the World Championships, the Players' Cup, and lots more, and learn a little bit about their decks as well. Certainly go over and check out that article. It's a great read.
Sounds like a pretty good plan. Another pretty good plan is bringing in our